Okay, so I guess they're all waiting back there. So let me introduce our panel. First, we have Dan Bernstein. He is a sleep specialist and acupuncturist. They're going to tell you what they do. I'm just going to call out their names. We have Andrea Chernus. Is that how you say it? Donald Garrity, Brooke Lieb, and Amambir Singe. Did I say it right? Okay, Singh. I only heard everybody's first name, so I butchered some of their last names. But let's just go down the panel, starting with Dan, and have everybody introduce themselves and tell you guys a little bit about why they are here for this special mind-body connection.
Hello, my name is Dan Bernstein. Glad to be here. Thank you all for coming. I'm an acupuncturist and a hypnotherapist. Been doing it for about 20 years. And I specialize in sleep therapy, and it really is wonderful to be able to help people release things like anxiety and pain and depression and stress in order that they might be able to sleep through the night. And so that's kind of the way I approach it. And sometimes I use herbs, sometimes supplements, and it's an honor to be here tonight. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Hi, my name is Andrea Chernus, and I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist with advanced certifications in diabetes education and sports nutrition. And my passion really is working with performing artists. I'm a nutritionist at the Juilliard School, and I work very closely with the drama department there, and I also work with vocalists, dancers, and musicians. And I like to help people meet them where they're at, try to help them improve their health with a lot of the performing artists. I work with them under the guise of performance nutrition, how to eat to sustain energy, keep your brain healthy, keep their bodies healthy, how to eat before, during, or before and after performances. I also work with people with lots of other health issues, and I'm really happy to be here, and that's it.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Don Garrity. Donald is fine. I'm a registered dietitian also, nutritionist, nutrition counselor, so many different names. I prefer nutritional anthropologist, but my job won't let me have that one. For the past 15 years, coming up in July, I am the nutritionist at Memorial Sloan Kettering's Cancer Center, but at their integrative medicine department. Fairly new department at the hospital, but I think one of the best departments to work in because we have acupuncture, we have massage, we have mind-body work, meditation, yoga, and nutrition, and we're there to help the patients get through the ordeal. We're open to the general public, but 90% I guess of what we do is cancer-related. My specific focus is helping patients to interpret the truths amidst the pros, the cons of anti-cancer diets, alternative cures, vitamins, minerals, and herbals during their treatment and beyond. And just try to give them a safe path with some leeway to do things that are proven to be safe and non-interfering. And I love my job, and happy to be here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brooke Lieb, and I'm a nationally certified teacher of the Alexander Technique. I have a private practice here in New York City, and I'm also the director of the Alexander Teacher Training Program at the American Center for the Alexander Technique, which was founded by Judy Leibowitz, and Judy started the Alexander program in the Juilliard Theater Department. And I'm here because I went to school to be there, but I knew that I would be a terrible waitress. And I really did not have the kind of ego structure to take auditioning and not getting hired. I would have taken it as rejection. I now understand that it's not. It's really just picking from a pool of an amazing group of talented people. So I love working with actors, and they make up a good percentage of my private practice. And I think Alexander Technique is a really great piece of your wellness toolbox. It's a dessert topping and a floor wax. It helps with vocal production, it helps with stress management, performance anxiety, creating the physical life of a character. dealing with the stress of living in a city or managing the ups and downs of your career. It's great if you're injured. It's great if you need to manage your head. And it really is a mind-body technique in that it gives you tools to manage not only the physical, but also the mental effects of stress, and keep yourself healthy and upright, and focused. Any of you who work in film and television know how much waiting time there is. And any of you who have to sustain a long run in a play, you know that there's physical demands and there's the need to keep it fresh and present and show up in the moment. So that's where I help. And the Alexander Technique helps as one of your important tools.
Hi, my name is Aman Bir, and I'm a Kundalini yoga teacher and yoga therapist, as well as licensed acupuncturist. And with my experience with Kundalini yoga, I've worked with several actors in terms of helping them to stay mentally clear and to really be in greater touch with their inner sense of vitality. And so that's something that has really helped me with the yoga practice, acupuncture, really changed my life. And so I went into it 10 years ago because I wanted to help other people with it as well. And so I work to teach in different yoga therapy trainings as well as yoga trainings around the world. And I practice acupuncture here in New York City as well. And so what I find with the actor's experience is really to allow yourself to take in these different roles and to allow yourself to clear the role when you need to as well. And I've worked with some actors who really had a hard time going into a role and then dropping the role. And some roles are really traumatic. And so to really release that trauma from the body, from the mind, from the spirit as well, so you stay clear physically, mentally. And so I'm really excited to be a part of this panel and happy to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. This is such an experiential panel. I want to visit each one of you guys in your office and get a session with you. But as much as we can, let's get those sessions here during this 2 hours that we have together. So let's get the ball started, like ball rolling with. We all have talked about the obstacles, I guess, that kind of, you guys help open the obstacles. But ours is a craft that you can practice, and with any craft, we want to get the edge in our industry. And sometimes we know we can empower ourselves with doing some of the things that you guys are here to represent, but what are some of the major obstacles you see that would impact maybe an actor who wants to open themselves up as much as possible, but maybe, like all of us, we all know the right things to do, but sometimes we're not doing the right things. So what are some of the major obstacles you see, if you could pinpoint them, that would relate to the actor?
Well, for myself, as a hypnotherapist, I see often actors who have performance anxiety. Fantastic, in a lot of ways that they know their craft, and then they have massive issues when they're about to get on stage. And so we have techniques in hypnotherapy where we can actually break that down and create a different sort of confidence that is meant to be on stage or in front of the camera. And, it's thrilling to see the shift that happens there. And that's just one of the ways that, that's the one that comes to mind immediately. It's, people have got layers of what makes them tick as an artist. I was a musician for 20 years. And, I found that my own experience was such that sometimes there was some self-sabotage involved, and that I think it's part of the artist's way to have this push and pull of I want this desperately, and then to have a part of them that will seek to minimize that or to sabotage it. And so one of the things that I work with some artists is just to talk about that and to figure out what's really going on. And we do that with parts therapy. And so in hypnosis, I will actually speak to the saboteur and get a response. People will say, well, I really want, the reason I'm there is because I want this person to understand that until they start meditating, I'm going to keep screwing with them. It's like, And so we get mediation. And I speak to the actual person. I say, did you hear what that person says? Say, yeah. Are you willing to meditate? I'm not so sure, you know. And so there's like a dialogue that goes through, and it can lead to interesting places. And I guess that's just one way that, you know, I when I work with actors that things come up. Thanks.
Yeah.
I find on a practical side, in terms of food and eating with actors and with most people that come to see me, is that it's not necessarily an issue of knowledge or awareness, but a lot of times it's an issue, especially with actors that are just starting out, time and money in terms of food and eating properly, and not even knowing where to begin, because it can be this huge, big thing. So I help people break it down into smaller, manageable parts, and not feeling like you have to do everything perfectly, but finding some ways to just get healthier eating in. The saboteur is can be a huge thing too. But for the most part, in the beginning, it's time or money, you know, eating healthfully, finding the time to get the right foods and not having to spend, especially here in New York, a lot of money. So I think that those are two of the biggest barriers that especially my actor patients or actor clients come to see me with.
And I just want to interject here that we're starting with these obstacles, but we are going to find the solutions too tonight. So, I mean, as we're ringing some bells here, I'm hearing some things I need to hear. So, keep going.
I actually haven't worked with many actors, a couple of famous ones, but the names have to remain unsaid. So I can't really comment on this particular aspect at the moment. I apologize.
That's all right.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Well, I think one of your big challenges is that you need to live the reality of what's going on in the character while you are being a technician and aware of what's going on in the space around you. And you can lose yourself in the character, or you can not be able to pull up what you need emotionally, because you've got to take care of some real concrete technical things. And then I think another big obstacle is what goes on in between getting hired from job to job. I mean, that is a full-time job in and of itself, and it does require that you manage your head and your thoughts, you maintain optimism, you find some place where you're having a satisfied artistic outlet, even if it's not in a paid production. You know that you have to keep yourself primed. And I think that one of the ways Alexander helps is that you literally learn to give yourself time and space, physically, emotionally, to stay primed. And then when the job comes, you've got to deliver. And being afraid, being worried, shuts you down. You all know that.
I would say what everyone has said on this panel is self-sabotage, and also allowing yourself to release yourself from the role. And so a huge dynamic is your relationship to your mind. And so meditation, there's many styles of meditation out there. And just to find a practice that works for you is something that you can incorporate as a daily lifestyle. And it's a way of acknowledging yourself, knowing yourself at the deepest level. So that way you can never really get lost in a role, but it actually allows you to be clear and to put more energy into the roles that you take on without actually letting them interfere with your own life and your relationships. And sometimes the idea of like being rejected from a role, sometimes we create a buffer or an ego defense mechanism. So allowing yourself just to stay mentally clear and to know yourself is you can never take it personally. You never have to do something to compensate for the different disappointments that may come up in your career. And just allows you to be clear in yourself and to be clear with keep going forward. And so this is a definitely important aspect to incorporate, how to build this relationship with yourself and your mind.
And just to be fair, Donald, since you didn't get to add anything there, I'd just ask you the question. We have some questions, so I'll just dive in with one. What foods sustain long-term energy?
Okay, there you go.
There you go.
Good. even though I might not talk a lot about energy for performance or sports or something like that, I'm certainly talk about energy a lot with patients who go through chemotherapy and afterwards, who are physically and emotionally depleted. And we get this question a lot. How do I deal with fatigue from a dietary standpoint? The first place I start is pretty bare bones and basic. I have this little catchphrase with my patients. I say whole grains and hydration, meaning instead of white rice, brown rice, instead of Wonder Bread, I don't want to get sued or anything, but instead of Wonder Bread, 7-grain bread, instead of Sugar Pops oatmeal. In other words, I like to call them the slow burn carbohydrates. They'll be broken down more slowly and they'll give you more sustained glucose throughout the day, whereas with the refined carbohydrates, you get a burst and then you inevitably will get some kind of a crash. And then hydration, I try to make things fun for my patients. Hydration, I use bad analogies. So full disclosure, this is a bad analogy. Every single biochemical reaction in your body is going on in a water environment, aqueous environment, including energy production. So think of a car and oil running low on an engine. What happens when the engine runs low? Things just start slowing up. So you want to keep well hydrated. So those are just two bare bones basic things. Of course, it's a lot more complicated that, but that's where we start. Andrew was just mentioning certain help, there's foods that are going to help this and there's foods that are not going to help energy. So it comes up a lot. Fortunately, like these two gentlemen, we have acupuncture, which also helps with fatigue at our place and stress reduction, but that's where I start. Now it can go further. There are supplements out there, carnitine, coenzyme Q10, possibly a B complex, possibly cordyceps, possibly ginseng, or traditional Chinese medicine formula. There are things like that. In certain instances, they might be okay with my patients, but I start with whole grains and hydration.
So this is being recorded, so if you need to get the list of what he just said, you can play this back and you can hear everything he said.
I'll have some disclaimers. Don't run out and buy that just because I said it. I believe in personalizing nutrition to the individual.
And that is important too. We'll get into supplements later on and how they can help and hurt depending upon how you use them. But let's continue on with these shoulds. I mean, self-sabotage just came up and reared its ugly head, and we're all too familiar with that. So let's, in a kind way, and refraining from the shoulds that make us punish ourselves, what are some of the gentler, if you are off the mark and you know you're not in a good, healthy state of mind-body connection, what are some of the gentler shoulds that you can start off with that, are easy to implement?
I say to my clients a lot, first of all, put yourself in the present. Instead of telling yourself that what you should do, think about what you can do and what you are doing, like that you're in it, because it's much more powerful to say, I am working on eating healthy, instead of saying I should be doing this, because nobody likes a finger being pointed at them, and that's what it really sounds like. So don't talk to yourself like, like you wouldn't want somebody talking to you. Like you wouldn't necessarily, you might say that to a friend, but you probably, might not be friends with that person anymore if that's the way you speak to your friends. But the way that you would want other people talking to you, that's how it would be a good idea to talk to yourself and try to empower yourself and make yourself feel like you're an active participant instead of, you're kind of criticizing yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Be your own best friend there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, I guess the fact that you're even thinking about nutrition in the first place is an entry point.
Absolutely.
Because you're concerned in the first place. So you guys all get bonus points for starting this evening just for being here.
I'd say one thing also is when we start being aware of what we're doing, it really begins to shift what we do. So what I tell some of my clients is, just notice the feeling that comes up when you're putting that donut in your mouth. You can put that donut in your mouth if you want to, but just notice what the feeling is that comes up before you do that. Is it anxiety? Is it anger? Is it loneliness? Is it boredom? And just notice it and put a little label on it. That way, the next time that you do it, you go, oh, I know what this is. This is boredom. This is anger. do I now? And then you start realizing you have a choice, because once you realize that you're not unconscious, you can actually be aware of the process. And the more aware of the process you become, the more you have the possibility for going, you know, I'm feeling these feelings right now, and I don't have to put that in my mouth. I can actually either put it down, or I can pick up a celery stick, or you know, or whatever. You know, start finding the substitutions. But the most important thing from my perception is having the awareness of what is triggering you to eat in a way that perhaps you know is not in your best interest.
Yeah, so habituate a mindfulness. Just as if you're doing the wrong things and you know you're doing the wrong things, just habituate a mindfulness around it.
Yeah, and without the judgment, just simply say, okay, that's interesting. That's what I'm doing now. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes, just to piggyback on that, sometimes I'll have, in a similar note, I'll have my patients think about how do I want to feel? How will my body feel if I eat this food? How do I want my body to feel? And there's no criticism there. It's an awareness, and it's an understanding, and it's also, it helps to cut the impulse a little bit, just to give yourself the opportunity to consider how you're feeling. You're not telling yourself you should or shouldn't do anything. We're taking the judgment out of that. And I have a whole list of other questions. How will I feel if I eat this? How will I feel if I don't eat it? Maybe I'll be proud of myself if I don't eat it. Or maybe I'll feel like I really wanted it. And that's okay too, because you're having a little bit more intention with your food choices.
Yeah, sometimes I just congratulate myself on all the things I said no to that day. It doesn't matter what I did eat, you know, what I said no to. It was at least a little self-control, yeah.
I know in terms of, well, you've studied Alexander technique
Yes.
at this very school.
And
so
it is invaluable.
if any of you have Alexander experience, you'll know what I'm talking about. But even if you don't, I mean, one of the tools is to slow down and take some time to get yourself located in physical space. And that is another delay that gives you an opportunity to get enough space between the trigger and how you want to respond. And in the Alexander technique, you're paying very specific attention to creating physical stress. And in most cases, along with that, you've stopped breathing. So even just to slow down, and you know, separate and apart from Alexander technique, there's a very valuable physiological reset that happens just by taking a big breath. So if, you know, just to say, well, let me see where I am in 2 minutes, and in 4 minutes, and in 5 minutes with my headspace. And when you have a success, write it down, because when we're in the face of stress, we forget, right? We become deer in the headlights, and we forget all of the things that we know. But you know a lot, and you just need a tool to reset so that you can access your own intelligence, because it's there. I mean, look, all of you are alive, lived long enough to get here tonight. You look like you're in good shape. It's just a question of having tools. And I do agree to listen to the way that you talk to yourself inside your head. It's critical to find a rational, calm, adult, supportive part of yourself when you're under stress.
One aspect also is to really find that time to be in love with yourself. And to love yourself is to love your strengths, but also your weaknesses. So to really know yourself and love yourself completely. And the more that you can allow that space and that time in your life, you can really start to observe those patterns when they come up, the self-saboteur, so to speak. And so even in terms of how we eat, when we eat, what we're eating, all these things, they come from some place. Or if we get in the way of an opportunity, where does that fear of success or fear of failure come from? And the more that you allow yourself to just accept who you are, love who you are, you allow that space to just observe those things. And through that observation, you create a shift. And so it's not necessarily about like forcing the self-saboteur out, but rather just observing and holding it in love. And that allows a room for growth and transformation within your life.
I'm really surprised by the fact that almost all of these answers were the same answer, you know? I mean, really, they came from so many different fields and different techniques, and still that's the same answer. Stop and listen to yourself. You know, that's a really beautiful thing that we just discovered. And that's the mindfulness that's in the mind-body connection. So let's go ahead and talk about the body connection part, because we've talked a lot about the power of the mind, which is incredible. And then that sort of seems to be our journey in. But what are some of the exercises that can help us manage this stress? The things that can keep us limber and agile, and how do we maintain a constant regimen once we've begun to take note? What's the next step? What are some exercises, the evolution from there?
Well, my specialty is Kundalini yoga, but I know all the other styles of yoga as well. And even if you've never tried Kundalini yoga, give it a try. It's a really wonderful practice that can be done for all different physical body types. And so sometimes with like the Hatha lineage of yogas, they're also wonderful and also helps you with your awareness, but sometimes physically you can't do those postures. And so if you're in that situation, Kundalini yoga is great because it offers a lot of modifications that it can be done in a wheelchair. It can be done in even just on your bed, different exercises. And there's thousands of exercises that you can incorporate. And fortunately now, because of the internet, there's so many different resources. If you can't go to your local yoga studio, and you can go on YouTube and look at different videos for different meditations and practices that you can incorporate. And really, it's about having your experience. So it's one thing to tell you like, oh, these exercises are really great because they'll help you with mental clarity, physical clarity, but the other thing to actually for you to try it yourself. And as actors, you know it's all about your experience. Like when you take on a role, it's taking that experience inside yourself. And it's the same with the physical practice. And although I don't practice it, Qigong is also a really powerful practice for mind-body awareness. And so the more that you can incorporate these type of exercises into your life, and it doesn't have to be a whole hour routine. Even something as simple as 3 minutes is enough to shift your mind, your body, and the flow of energy within inside of yourself. And so really just to give yourself that opportunity of trying out these things and seeing how they work and how they can really enhance your life. And you don't have to wear a turban in order to practice. You don't have to come from any religion. You know, you could practice in a beautiful dress, or in a suit and tie. It's really, it's for any and everybody. And so I've just seen so many people benefit from it, and that's why I just love to really share it.
Although I'm not an exercise teacher, I do introductions to integrative medicine, and they're called overviews. I bring in the patients or their family members, and I describe everything we do. And I guess my message would be, whatever you choose, make sure that's what you want to do, that you like it. Because what happens is I go down the list of all these wonderful things that we offer, because there'll be a family member in the room going, I really want them to try massage. I really want them to try yoga. I really want them to try Tai Chi Qigong. And I'm looking at the patient, I'm going, well, want to hear about Tai Chi Qigong? And they'll go, I hate Tai Chi Qigong. I don't want to do it. They're making me do it. I'm saying, well, what do you like? And I go, I like push-ups and sit-ups and personal training. I go, we have that. So I guess what I'm just saying is, don't create additional stress by doing something you think that is good to do because everybody's doing it, or that everybody's writing about it, or is just on Dr. Oz. You know, no, I'm just saying, but just because it's there, find something that you like to do. And that's how I've been guiding the patients all these years. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brooke, before you begin, I'm sorry, she was leaning up too. Would you just explain briefly, because I think some people may not even know what Alexander Technique really is.
Alexander Technique was created by Mr. Alexander, which is why it's completely non-descriptive, and you don't know what it is. But it's a systematic process that teaches you how to stop over-compressing your body, throwing your spine out of alignment, and interfering with your natural postural mechanism. And you don't need to do any specific exercises. You don't need to go away from your environment. In fact, what makes it such a good complement with everything that's being offered here is that you use it on the battlefield of life. So if you will just imagine that there's a 50-pound concrete brick sitting on top of your head and someone removes that concrete brick, some of you may experience a little bit of relief. Are you letting the chair support you, or are you duplicating gravity's effort by pressing down? Are you trying to overcome gravity by holding yourself up out of the chair right now? Are you holding your breath? Are you clenching your jaw? Are you holding on to your abdominal muscles and trying to have good posture? If any of you have ever used a memory foam earplug, it's the best analogy I can come up with, which is that you can compress it. If you try to give it good posture by using muscles to pull it into shape, you're just distorting it. It's really about doing less of what pulls you down so that your body becomes buoyant. And there's no one in this room whose postural mechanism is defective, I can tell from looking at you. So it's really just about learning to think of widening, lengthening, moving up. If you're out on the street, notice your set point of how far you tend to look. All you need to do is look farther out on the horizon and you'll realize, ooh, I'm a lot taller than I remembered. And you will begin to get a sense of the internal and external environment connecting. If you want to read more about the technique, the internet is riddled with videos and introductions and articles, so I don't want to take up your time, your valuable time, when you could be getting specific tips and tools.
Well, but thank you for that.
Yes,
And that was
absolutely.
great help. And also for things like, you know, the role in the theory of everything. I always thought that Alexander technique in my early studies was about, you know, having great posture, but it's very critical if you're playing the Elephant Man, if you're playing, you know, Stephen Hawking. Those, I am certain that he worked with an Alexander coach regularly for something like that, because you can find the expansion within any posture, and that's works with heels. It works going upstairs. Just to add to, if you ever have a defect, character defect, or playing Richard III, you have to get an Alexander coach. I mean, it's right.
And you know, it doesn't take a lot of lessons. I mean, in England, they will now reimburse if you have chronic low back pain. They will pay for you to have 6 Alexander lessons, because they did a clinical trial and people got a significant enough improvement. And it is hands-on work, it's gentle. Most of us don't get touched very much in a non-demanding way in our lives. And it doesn't take a lot of instruction. There are group classes. If you haven't experienced the work, I would encourage you. There are cards. We have group classes you can drop in. They're very affordable. And they're on Monday nights when the theater is dark. So
Wonderful.
it has to be experienced, though. You know, I can't describe the taste of cilantro to someone who's never tasted it. You got to experience it. And Michelle's a huge fan.
A huge fan. A lot of us, we graduated years ago, and we talk about how it's one of the main things we practice every day, working or not working. It's like you run into a grad school buddy. Do you still do the Alexander technique? All the time, like all the time. But back to where we were in the panel discussion, and thank you for that. I think it was invaluable for all of us. We were talking about the ways in which you do build a consistent pattern, or that you help to keep yourself limber, and what kinds of exercises that you can regularly do to build a regimen for yourself, or thereabouts, whatever was happening.
Let's see now. I don't know what I was thinking, but I would say that one of the most simple things we can all do, and this is something that seems very obvious, and perhaps in front of actors it is obvious, because most of you, I guess, take singing lessons, so you know how to breathe. But breathing is something that it astounds me how few of us really grow up knowing how to breathe effectively. And in breathing effectively, we actually get to de-stress. So just taking it, when you go home anytime, or if you're home, you just can, put one hand on your chest and another hand on your belly, and then just see where you're breathing, where the bulk of the air is going in. And if you're finding that the main part of the air is going up into your chest, start thinking that it needs to go into the belly. And that's where, breath really thrives. That's where we get the most oxygen, and when we do that, and we start taking longer breaths, we actually start de-stressing, and so we can actually do that anywhere, anytime. And you know, when we're really breathing well, stress has a hard time getting in there. And if it does, we can actually de-stress simply by, I mean, I have a lot of my clients who basically, once we get them breathing, their anxiety is 50% less because they're just breathing better, you know, and they know how to access it. So that's kind of one of those seeming no-brainers, and yet pretty helpful for most people when they start breathing better.
I'm going to put you on the spot for a second, Dan. Would you just walk us through like a simple breathing exercise?
I'll try.
Thank you.
Simple
Right?
breathing exercise, right?
That
Why
made
not?
me want to breathe.
Right? So we just sit up, and then we can just, as I say, you know, if you're wondering whether you breathe right or whether you're breathing not right or wrong, but simply to your greatest capacity, you can place one hand on your chest and another at your belly, and then just take a nice deep breath and hold it, and notice where it is. Now, of course, we do both. In other words, breath does go into and then take a breath out. Don't hold it. But just notice where the breath, if you're like, I mean, for many years, this is how I breathed. And there was nothing going in there. And somebody finally kind of set me straight. I started doing Qigong, and I noticed, like, all of a sudden, immediately, it was as if the endorphins kicked in immediately. So one of the things that we can do is simply, if you're in a crowd, if you're in a subway, you can just, I mean, I do it as a kind of a trigger. You know, I just tell myself, okay, I'm just going to relax. I'm going to take 3 long breaths, and I take 7 seconds in, 5 seconds hold, and 7 seconds out. So it's and if you have the opportunity, listen to your breath. Listening to your breath is actually calming. It's almost like a white noise that we have built into us, and that white noise is also calming. And so it you know, and when you do it enough, you do it at night, if you're having a hard time sleeping, you can actually calm yourself. You can actually, instead of thinking of white sheep jumping or whatever, you know, you can visualize. You can start using visualization, and usually I start saying, okay, imagine that you're walking along a path, and maybe perhaps you're in a rainforest, and you're taking these deep breaths, and you hear a rainforest waterfall, you know, and you can start walking towards the waterfall, and imagine the waterfall, and hear how that sounds. And as you hear that sound, keep breathing. And so slowly, we relax our central nervous system. Okay, that's really what de-stressing is about. We have a nervous system the sympathetic nervous system is all coiled up. We're in New York, okay? We got a lot of stuff. We're thinking, where's the rent coming from? Did I get the role? What does that person think of me? How do I navigate this? You know, all this stuff is coming at us. So it's, you know, and how do you know, so naturally our nervous system is completely bundled up. And so we have to take the power back, you know, by going internally, by using the exercises that these other wonderful colleagues are talking about, and also simply starting with the breath. I hope that helped a little.
Oh, a lot, yes. Everybody feel better? I do. It's very relaxing. Did you have anything to add to the?
No, I mean, that can be a technique to use also if you are stressed and you feel like eating. It's perfect because it can really calm you down. It can help you to deal with the impulse. It can help to shift your thinking because you're thinking about your breath instead of thinking about food. It really works tremendously.
All right, so since stress has popped up, I mean, we're talking about an ideal here, and we're talking about adding a mindfulness, and we're all very nice and relaxed here, and this is a panel of experts on this, so they are all very beautifully centered and balanced. But But when we are doing our career, I mean, today I was running to my agents. It started to rain. I started to run faster. You know, like you got the heels on. You know, we don't take a lot of time. I mean, I read this thing about Bill Murraying your life and trying. They said everything. He said everything that you do, if you're relaxed, you'll do it better. So he just consistently tries to mindfully relax all the time. And think of him. He's probably very, he's one of the more relaxed people that we see in our industry. But a lot of us are really high strung. A lot of us are running around. You're late a lot of the times, and your dominoes are stacked. And we're carrying a lot of costume pieces, our shoes in our bag. We've got, right? And the water and the food and everything, and the cooler, the ice pack to keep the vegetable, let's get real here, and like put it in terms of what are the major stressors? How do we beat those stressors? What are some of the tricks of the trade? We've talked about mindfulness, but like let's really get into the nitty gritty here of like if you don't have the peace happening, There's no yoga music playing. It's just all car horns and people going, "Hey, move over," and hitting you and stuff on the subway. So what then? What then?
So in certain, okay, so before I actually did yoga, I was, before I started teaching, I was working in a law firm. It's a past life. And so one of the techniques that I used actually was breath work. And that really helped. And so, for example, there was one partner who everyone was afraid of because he would scream and throw things and really dramatic guy. And so this was when I first was learning about breath and meditation. And I learned this concept that if you work to shift your breath, you work to shift your mind. And so by doing that, you also can shift your environments. And so whenever I was around him, I would breathe really slowly. And something I did at home first was I would look in the mirror and make sure that when I was doing breath work, that it wasn't obvious. It wasn't like, it would look a little strange. So I just made sure that, it was just very casual, but just more conscious of my breath whenever I was around him. And it was so interesting to see because whenever I was around him, he was so relaxed. And he was just always called me buddy. And so all the other partners and lawyers wanted to work with me whenever they had to work with him, because there was something about you relaxes him. And so it was just like my little secret that I kept. And so in situations where you really you can't bust out an asana, you can't bust out into exercise, you can go into your breath. And then also the power of affirmations is really something really special. And so in yoga, of course, there's mantras as well. Mantras are great because they just help to focus your mind on repetition of a mantra, of a sound current, and to, within that singularity, find a greater clarity. But even if you don't relate to mantras in other languages, you can use just positive affirmations in English, like I am grateful, I am successful. Like these positive affirmations, as simple as it sounds, is a powerful way of just shifting your mindset in any situation. Because our mind is so powerful that whatever we bring to it, it expands. So if we feel like I'm closed off, I'm crowded right now, that's your reality because your mind expands it. But and it's not necessarily lying to yourself, but it's finding the positive within that situation, finding something that you're grateful for, even in the most challenging situations, just gives you the opportunity to shift it. And when the challenges come to you in our everyday life, sometimes the mantra becomes like, why me? And so it's to shift it and to be like, okay, who else? Because in that, you just recognize your own strength in a situation. And so those are just simple things that you can add to everyday life that really just shift everything.
I think ours is, why didn't I get a regular job or a day job? Where's the steady paycheck? That's what always creeps into I could use a steady paycheck. Yeah, that's fabulous though. Really just, it just reminding yourself how grateful it is that you are running your own life, that you're in charge of yourself. Yeah.
My favorite too. I have time. I know it's a lie, but you know what? The subway is going to take as long as it's going to take. I have time, and I don't have to hold my breath. There's nothing, there's, one of the great gifts of the Alexander technique is the more you study it, the more you're paying attention to what you're doing, and you realize it is hard enough to control myself. I cannot control anyone else. So it's a great tool for codependence. Yeah, there's very little you have control over, but you do have control over yourself. So, and is this going to matter when I'm 70 or when I'm on my deathbed? You know, I've done some life coaching apart from Alexander Technique, and I say to people, I know you're really upset and attached to this. And here's the acid test. Is this going to matter when I'm 70? And you know what? If you're smoking cigarettes and you don't quit, it's going to matter. But that's a great barometer. Am I going to be thinking about this 50 years from now? And then you realize probably not even 2 hours from now. It's going to be over.
Cool. So for the nutritionist, what are some superfoods that we can have? And we talked about working on a budget. How do we beat that? How do we beat the budget? What do we do?
Well, one thing that I recommend to my patients, and especially my students at Juilliard here in New York, I think that we're kind of lucky because not in all parts of the city, but in a lot of parts of the city, there are these fruit and vegetable vendors all over the place. And I have students that I say to them, do you know that there's a guy around the corner that sells 5 bananas for $1? And, just seeking out and finding, quality foods at good prices that's affordable to you. It doesn't, the ultimate might be organic, grass-fed, this, that, and the other thing, but, is it going to make that much of a difference? What makes more of a difference is getting in the quality foods, because quality foods are going to bring you a long way, and finding things that are inexpensive. Beans, for example, sometimes, depending upon, how your body tolerates, but starting little by little, it can increase your tolerance. They're very inexpensive. Oatmeal is a very healthy food, and you can buy a huge container of it for like $3 or $4, and it can feed you for a month of breakfasts rather than buying the individual package. So little things, looking for quality foods at low cost, and I help people with that. And it can be done, and it can be done well. And making your own food, and not if you're able to. Find some time one day a week to prepare things so that you're not running into these bodegas or a deli or something and spending excess money. Because I help people to manage their money and their food budget so that you can get the biggest bang for your buck. And I think that's really, really important and key, especially for actors that are running to 1 million auditions and maybe you don't have too many roles. For the people that are really on a tight budget.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, great. Great answer.
Really, I would say also search out foods rich in nature's relaxing mineral, magnesium. Magnesium is our relaxing mineral, I like to call it, and that's in beans, oatmeal, whole grains, nuts, seeds. It's there. It's not in the refined grains. That's the funniest thing about refined grains. When they refine them, they leave a lot of the good stuff on the refining floor, and they don't put everything back in. So I generally tell people, when you see a label when they're adding things on there, like riboflavin, all the B vitamins and iron, it's because they either lost it along the way or wasn't there to start with. So, but look for foods rich in magnesium. And in some instances, it's okay for certain individuals to take magnesium, but don't run out to Vitamin Shop and buy that right now. That's what happens with a lot of my yeah, there's different forms, there's different absorption rates, but it also can cause diarrhea, and it can also cause other problems like that. So it should be tailored. Again, I'm a person about personalizing nutrition, but the funniest thing is I have a lot of conversation with patients about telling them the benefits of whole foods and what nutrients are in there, and we get into a discussion of magnesium. I said, there's been clinical trials that have been done where they've used for early stage hypertension magnesium, for early stage restless leg syndrome, magnesium, and for migraine headaches, not severe. There have been trials out there where magnesium has been helpful. And we go down, and the first thing out of everybody's mouth is, I live above a GNC. How much? And I'm like, whoa, let's go back to the foods. Let's go back to the foods. So that's just one suggestion. Organic is expensive, and the science is, I personally, my hospital, don't pin this on my hospital. I personally think it's worthwhile, but there's also smart ways to go about it. This is not my hospital's recommendation. This is me. You can pin this on me. The environmental working groups, Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, there you go. You got this list of foods. These Clean 15, buy them wherever you want.
Well, pretend we haven't, because you got some yeses, but pretend we haven't. What are they?
Right off the top of my head, I think the potatoes are at the top of the list of things that are high in pesticide
Well, you don't have to list
residue.
the whole thing, but tell them what they are, the Clean 15 and the Dirty
Basically
Dozen.
what that means is Environmental Working Group, EWG, available on a Google search. .org, right. They have this nice little printable sheet that shows you that these are the 12 produce that are highest in pesticide residue. The Clean 15 are the lowest. So it really doesn't matter where you spend your money over here. If you're going to invest, spend it over here. It's one of my things that I like. Again, not an official recommendation from where I work, but that's okay because you're looking for ways to spend your money wisely. But I always say this to every one of my patients, every single one, no matter what the science will eventually tell us. I'll take you eating bird's eye frozen vegetables, Dole bananas, and sun-kissed oranges over candies, cakes, cookies, and French fries. Okay?
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. I'll still take plants and plant-based diet over those things. So there you go.
Yeah. You have anything to add?
They've said it beautifully. Anything to add? No, basically, I agree with the, stay away from pesticides as much as you can. I love, if you don't even look at the list, just think of what fruit has thicker coverings. And generally speaking, if you're looking at tangerines, watermelons, they tend to have less pesticides rather than the things that I love, such as, strawberries, which are the number one worst. And I mentioned celery sticks; those are also. But I think sometimes in terms of what's your worst enemy? Is it if you're 50 pounds overweight, you got to figure out how to lose that weight, hopefully healthily, but whatever it takes, because that is the number one killer right now, and from heart attacks. So. Hopefully we do things right, but if we're only 2/3 right, that's okay too. I'll just say also in terms of, since I'm the so-called sleep specialist, what I tell people is, some people have a hard time. They wake up at 2:30 in the morning. A lot of people do, and they have a hard time getting to sleep unless they eat something. What I tell my patients is to have a little bit of protein around and not go for the carbs. Okay, the carbs have the sugar, that will not help them. You have a little piece of, chicken that, that's left over. That's the best thing you can do for yourself to just get back to sleep.
All right.
And if you can avoid not eating, sometimes people get into a pattern where they feel like if they don't eat something, they won't get back to sleep, and then it becomes this self-fulfilling. I don't know, if you agree with this or not, but it can become a self-fulfilling thing where they feel like they have to eat something to get back to sleep, and then it kind of digs them in deeper and deeper. So if there are other maybe relaxation exercises that they can try to do, so that you're not dependent on food to get back to sleep. I don't know if you agree with that. Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about these erratic hours. I mean, when you're working a show, like you see the hour of 2 a.m., in the theater because you kind of have to. But when you're even on set, you're sometimes on set for 14, 16 hours, and then it's a couple of days a week. So let's talk about ways in which we can boost our endurance to get through things like this. Even, we know how important sleep is, but sometimes it's not a possibility for certain days on end. How do we boost our endurance to get through these long stretches when we're really called to be in high demand for an inordinate amount of time?
Well, in terms of the food, I think eating through the day and not overdoing it at any one time. If you say you pack some food, one thing that I work with the students at Juilliard is that we we try to eat part of that food at a time. And then when you have another break, eat another part of that food. If you bring a peanut butter sandwich with you, for example, cut it into quarters, and have a little bit at a time to last you through the day and stay hydrated. Hydration, if you're dehydrated, you'll become tired. Having protein helps to keep you a little bit more, definitely keeps you more alert. We want to stay away from like these sugars and refined foods and cookies and refined crackers and all those sorts of things. But what I would say is, and I deal a lot with eating for endurance and eating for performance. I wrote a book, Nutrient Timing for Peak Performance, which is a sports nutrition book, but it also translates very well to actors because all the actors that I've worked with do have long hours. And so we try to eat foods that sit well, but break up your meal into like a third of the meal and have it at 3 different points rather than eating too much at one time to weigh you down.
I couldn't agree more. Again, I experience things a little differently. People are going through chemotherapy, which is just brutal and just could beat you down pretty badly. So my hospital has myself a dietitian in integrative medicine, but we also have a lot of clinical dietitians, and they have a wonderful booklet for our patients online that they counsel out of. And for poor appetite, fatigue, low energy, one of the classic things you'll see through a thread through most of the recommendations are eat 6, 7, 8 small meals throughout the day instead of 3 large ones. The old term, it used to be called grazing throughout the day, a little bit here, a little bit there, just like you said. But that does give a way of dispersing, not having your body overburdened at any one meal, because I'll tell you, I call it the Thanksgiving syndrome. You just have that big meal, and everybody's like really like this around the television. That's because all your blood's rushing down here to absorb, and your digestion requires energy. It takes a lot of energy from your body to digest food. So if it's smaller meals throughout the day, it'll probably give you more sustained energy. I'll go back to whole grains and hydration. And caffeine's not an enemy, but it's also something not to overdo, because just like refined sugar, you'll get the rush and the crash. And I talk to my patients a lot going, come on, most of America, white refined carbohydrates and a nice coffee. And where are they all in the office environment, at least? Where are they all around 10 in the morning? Back at the coffee tray and the donut tray.
Yeah.
They're living a life like this. Whereas you do some of the better foods smooth throughout the day, it's more even keel energy dispersal.
It's also better for the sound guy who can hear all of that going on. Have you guys? Sound guys hate big eaters. They're like, I know it's ruined. Although it is a good way to get some voiceover, like you get to cover it if you are a big eater. I don't know.
or sound effects.
Yeah. But everybody chime in on this endurance building.
In the Alexander technique, one of the things that you learn is how to lie down, and we have you keep your eyes open. And one of the things about that, I had an actress who came for lessons, and she said, you do this table work, and I had to go home and take a nap afterwards because I just got so relaxed. And then after her 5th or 6th lesson, what she found was that she understood that you can let your body completely relax and keep your mind awake. And having that linked, an alert mind and a relaxed body, gets you to the point where 2 minutes of constructive rest can refresh you. Because when you're lying down in the Alexander work, you're actually saying very specific things to yourself, which means that your mind is not available to run off into these unproductive, scary places. But most of us, because of how we were educated, associate attention with physical narrowing, and that's tiring. But it is possible to have a very relaxed body and an awake mind, and it is a skill that you need to develop. And if you send me an email, I will send you a constructive rest sequence that you can record and learn. And I would tell you just 1 week of lying down for 3 minutes, you can learn to train yourself to have an awake mind and a relaxed body.
Wow.
There's also meditation is wonderful, and so I just want to put in a plug for it. It requires some, I won't call it work, but it requires a little discipline. It requires, taking 15 or 20 minutes out of the day But the amount of fuel that you get from that really can keep you going for, for many hours. There are many types of meditation. I do generally Qigong meditation, which is also a form of, and I also teach it, and it's a form of therapy wherein your body gets energy, okay? It literally, your body becomes stronger. I also do want to echo the whole idea of what we put in our bodies throughout the day really has everything to do with how much energy we'll have at 2 a.m. So if we put coffee in our systems, if we drink a couple of drinks, if we do chocolate, if we do sugar, all that stuff will the same peaks that it gives us, the same reason that we go in there doing that stuff will actually crash us. And so the more you crash, the less you'll have available at 11, 12, 1, 2. And it's just sort of like, paying Peter to play Paul, whatever the saying is.
Robbing
You know what I'm
Peter.
saying? Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. I knew it was wrong from get-go. So, I just kind of, I would like to, and it's, we're all, I grew up on every one of those things, but at the same time, as we let go of them, we find that our energy is more lasting, it's more consistent, and we feel better, and after, you want that drink, have it at 2:30, do it after everything. And by that time, you probably won't even want it, so, yeah.
Well, one of the ways that I have really helped my sense of vitality, especially when I was working in the law firm, we had to work really long hours. And so going back to what they were saying, the diet is key. And I noticed for myself, I had a lot of emotions tied into my diet. And so when I first pursued the yogic path, I decided to become vegetarian. And so for me, growing up, my diet basically was chicken, fried chicken, all types of chicken, corn, potatoes, cookies, cake, and cookies. And so when I became vegetarian, I just cut out the meat, and then I kept getting tired, and I was really sick, and I was really drained. I didn't understand. I was just like, okay, in some sense I feel better because I'm meditating, but I just feel tired, and I feel like I can't even go into my practice deeper. And so then it was just more about like building that consciousness about the quality of the foods I was eating. So I went back to eating meat, and I felt better, of course, because I was getting protein, because I had no understanding of nutrition. And so then for me, when I started incorporating more green foods into my life and cooking them as well, then it built that relationship to the food, and I got to really see my own inner experience. And I'm like, oh, I have more energy throughout the day. I'm a little bit more alert later on at night when I have to stay up and do this deposition. And so, and then from there, like for me, vegetarian diet works. And I know every single person is different. We all have different constitution. We all have different needs. So this is where it's important, like seek out a nutritionist to really work with what your particular body's. And also from an Eastern perspective to know what elements to work with as well. And so to incorporate this understanding of your body and the foundation, which is diet, is really important because that is the temple, that's the foundation of your temple to support your clarity, your endurance, your vitality, especially if you have to keep up long hours.
And now suppose that we've blown ourselves out and we're starting to get sick, that happens, and we still have to work. I mean, you see it all the time on TV and film when that actor is like, he's definitely sick that day, and he's trying not to, or they've even written it in, that the line about having a cold. But what happens? How can we help our immune system? What are some of the things we can do to help our immune system? And I'm sure acupuncture. We haven't spoken much about acupuncture too. So if any of these things, or if you feel like there's something you've missed so far that you've thought of again, throw it in here too. So immunity, how do we improve it?
Yeah, for sure. Acupuncture is one way that definitely can boost the immune system. And there are many clinical trials that show the effect of acupuncture boosting the immune response. And so this is something that on many different levels, one concept is just by helping the body to relax, helping the mind to relax, we create a state within inside of our body internally that allows for greater healing time, or greater healing recovery, rather. And also to allow our body to be more efficient in terms of maintenance. And so with this, our immune system can be stronger, our healing time can be reduced. And so this is something that definitely can help us as we have to maybe sacrifice sleep in order to, with our career, so that your immune system stays strong. And so that you don't have to resort to steroids in order to compensate for a cold and you have a part that you need to go through. So the idea is preventative medicine, preventative wellness. And so this starts with the patterns with your diet, the patterns with your the quality of your sleep that you're having, and then doing things that you know will help you to relax in your life. So to spend that time to learn Alexander technique, get acupuncture, to get a massage. Just little things that you can incorporate to your own wellness will help the impact of your life. And if you don't even have time for that, then just simple things like meditation is something that's really wonderful because it just allows you to mentally shift things. And to really see that relationship between your mind and body is so important. Because especially like if you're really stressed out all the time, then you're creating on a physical level glandular disbalance. So your hormones start to shift. Your adrenals start to get strained. And so you start producing more cortisol. So you start putting more weight on. You start having more inflammation in the body. So it creates this whole cascade. And so these are definitely important principles to really just consider in your life, how to really incorporate these steps to prevent the illness from even happening.
And I see our panelists are all like, they're all nodding and like, don't say anymore. But I encourage you guys to go deeper. I mean, he's given us a really strong overview, and I see you guys all nodding in agreement. So go as deep as you care to go with all what he introduced.
One thing that I think is important in terms of immunity is that, I know weight is a big issue for a lot of people. And sometimes, in addition to all the stress that's placed on you, if you're trying to, and some people are trying to lose weight for a particular part, but if you're eating too little, that can impact your immune function because your body needs certain nutrients from food in order to make antibodies. So we need to have enough, for example, protein available so that our body can use protein to make antibodies to fight off illness. And if we're eating too little, which can happen also, especially if you're stressed or you're trying to lose weight, the protein is not available to make the antibodies, and you can become more worn down if you're not eating sufficiently. We always talk about overeating, but if you're way under eating, that can also put your immune function at risk.
The Chinese medicine, let's put it that way, are very much into lifestyle. I mean, that's one of the core things that they stress in terms of longevity, and how that manifests is really to become aware when we're really pushing ourselves to a point where, I'm just pushing myself because I can, okay? I mean, I'm a little older, and I'm in my 20s and my 30s, I thought I was indestructible, and I'm sure I was, but I don't think, it helped too much. And so what I would say is to become aware of our bodies. When is our body saying enough? When is, because they talk, in Chinese medicine, they talk about lifestyle being food, stress, sexuality. Okay, that's part of it, and
There's a lot of breathing in there too.
They do heavy breathing.
Hey,
and that is a lifestyle in itself. So I guess I would, rather than caution, I would just encourage everybody to become aware of when you're pushing your body, and just noticing it and saying, I don't really need to do that. Especially with today's stress, today's pollution, it's taken on different magnitude, and I always encourage people to really just take care of your body, just take care of yourself. And I know that sounds really basic, but this is a town where we really, we feel like, I got to take it to the max, man, got to take it to the, and sometimes that's not serving us.
just Bill Murray it a little bit more.
There you go, chill. Great. Bill Murray it a little more.
Yeah.
Just stop me if I keep going on. Okay. All right. I deal a lot with immune systems because, coming back again to what my patients go through, theirs are beaten down, and in the harshest possible way, not just from any stress that they're creating. I'm talking the chemotherapy beats it down, so I deal a lot with immune function. I'm so happy that you brought up your experience with changing the diet. This idea that there's a diet for a nation is just plain idiotic, okay? That the Mediterranean diet is perfect for every one of you, that vegetarianism, veganism, and this is perfect for every one of you. No, the best diet for you is the best diet for you. And as we move forward into genetic medicine, we're gonna know what that is. And when you said you felt much better when you added meat back in, that happened to me. I went all macrobiotic 20 years ago, and I turned into a ghost. And I lost energy. So let's talk about you personalize the diet. Now, there are aspects of your diet that are very friendly to your immune system, like garlic and onions, and scallions and shallots, and shiitake mushrooms, and green tea, and things like that. So these are very good things that are helpful for your immune system. And then taking it a step further, don't take this as a prescription. I'm so genuinely proud of my department. We were the first department attached to a major oncology center that studied an extract of a mushroom called maitake. Now, full disclosure, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, they use formulas. It's a much more in-depth science of using these things. But in the United States, we have a way of we want to put something in isolate it, standardize it. And I'm not sure say that's a good thing, but with a nod to the beauty of traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic, from those systems came this idea from some Asian oncology centers that there are these mushroom extracts that actually could help the immune system. And we studied one in breast cancer survivors right after treatment, showing how, and we used to call it an immune stimulant, and now because of that study, we're calling it an immune modulator. But there are things out there, all the naysayers of supplements that I run across, there are supplements on the shelves that could be helpful to you. You should, again, seek guidance with that and personalize it. But beyond maitake mushroom, there's reishi extract, there's this astragalus, or called astragalus. These are parts of healing systems, but in our American market, they're more often just singularized. So there's so much that can be done for the immune system, in addition to stress reduction and eating healthy. But seek out guidance. I want a shameless plug, is it okay? We have a wonderful site. You can get it on Google without going through the Sloan Kettering system, called About Herbs. If you just go on Google and put in my hospital's letters, MSKCC, that's Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, put in About Herbs. There's 250 monographs on there of various supplements and things you should know, not just about cancer, about things we know. It's cancer specific in a lot of instances, but it's a great resource about the information we know. But diet can help your immune system, stress reduction can help your immune system, and when necessary, there are supplements that can help. Proven, safe, but it should be personalized to you. So I hope I haven't. Oh, and one of my favorite books is, this is just off the chart here, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Have you ever heard of that book? It's like one of my favorite books, written by a doctor anthropologist, called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And basically, from what I remember from 15 years ago, it's like when the zebras are out there on the plains, they know when the lion is hungry. They know, and when that lion's ready to come, boom, rush of cortisol, rush of all these things, stress mechanism. And then when that's all done, unfortunately, one of their brethren are gone, and it all comes back down. And what this guy's point was that we don't live like that. We're on a constant low level of stress about the subway, about the traffic, about the audition, about the patients I'm going to see this whole day. Damn it, I don't think. So in other words, we're always on this lower level of these stress hormone release, which is probably worse than being chased by a tiger once in a while. So, if you're interested, it's just, I knew I was going to go off sometime there, but that's just a fun book to read about stress in general from an anthropological point of view. Oh, yes, shameless plug, it's MSKCC. No, you don't have to do that. Just put it in your Google search and put About Herbs. Go on there. Yeah, there's 250 monographs. I wrote about 30 or 40. But I just, if you want to go on there, about there, just shameless plug there, sorry.
Well, in our industry, when you go off like that, it's called passion, and we love it. So thank you. Yes. Yes. So just going into well, let me stick with this too, because we have two other questions that came in. But I just lost where I was. Oh, vocal health. Because even in the Alexander technique, he was started because he was tall and he was compressing, and he ended up losing his voice. So just speak a little bit about vocal health and how your particular craft or trade deals with vocal health. Just because it's a separate element of our industry.
Well, Alexander Technique addresses habits and belief systems, many and most of which are erroneous. So what feels correct in your body may in fact not be correct in actual practice. And relearning the concept of how you produce sound as a full body experience. It's nothing I can't teach you now, but I would say the one contribution that Alexander left was there was a speech and voice exercise that he inherited, which he called the whispered ah, which would be an Alexandrian approach to working with deep breathing. And so if you just allow yourself to extend an exhalation on a sigh of utter contentment, it has to be a sigh of happiness that has an expansion in it.
And you can walk us through it, Brooke.
Absolutely.
I'll put you on the spot.
Absolutely. So, you know, we keep inviting that 50-pound brick to disappear from our head. And by the way, the moment that you think it's gone, it's returned, but that doesn't matter. You just have to focus on releasing that compressive force from the top of your head. And instead of being concerned with projecting sound, you can't project a wave, by the way, you can only project a particle. And most of us physically are pushing our necks and our skulls forward and contracting the muscles that actually need to expand and take their time contracting to move air out to make good and healthy sound. So start lightly and in good spirits. Think of something that makes you happy. I don't have a big enough picture of my cat smiling, but that's what I go to. Think of something that makes you happy, and when you find yourself on your next exhalation, just extend out on the vowel ah. Ah of pasta, ah of father. If you're gluten intolerant, think father. If you have father issues, think pasta. But just take a nice And one of the secrets to this sigh is that it's not a sigh of collapse, it's a sigh of utter contentment. And just when you find yourself on an out breath, keep getting rid of that brick and think of a vertical tube and just allow yourself to sigh out on the vowel. And then in your vocal warm-up, you want to begin to notice, can I keep that sense of an open tube, or am I starting to physically and literally push forward? That's where we start to put mechanical stress. You know, Alexander said himself, it's a good thing I lost my voice, or I never would have been looking at how critical the poise of your head on the top of your body is for all your vital functions. Again, go to the internet. There are hundreds of videos which will tell you the theoretical basis behind this. And Alexander's best advice was, don't hold your breath. So don't try to breathe deeply, because that turns into contraction and pulling in. What we think is deep breathing is not. It's shortening and it's pulling down and it's creating tension. So in order to get the result that you want, you learn what not to do.
Yeah, wonderful. Vocal health?
Well, there's definitely foods that can help vocal health and harm vocal health. Sometimes it can be specific to each individual, but generally when I work with vocalists, we recommend, first of all, that beverages should be more room temperature. Very hot and very cold can be damaging to the vocal cords. It can put a strain on the vocal cords. So that's something that should be paid attention to. Caffeine actually can be constricting to the vocal cords. So, you know, no Starbucks on every corner. I mean, it's just not great for vocalists. If you have reflux, if you're experiencing reflux, that can be damaging, meaning, you know, you have like, you're belching a lot, or you have acid. Acidic foods can be problematic. A lot of vocalists stay away from a lot of citric fruits and juices because those can be irritating to the vocal cords. But when people experience reflux, it could be either over or under production of stomach acid, so that really should be evaluated by someone. The general recommendations, if you're experiencing reflux, is not to eat large meals, not to have spicy foods, not to eat high-fat meals. So any of those things that are causing a reaction, obviously stay away from. If you stay away from those things and you're still experiencing reflux and problems and a burning to your throat, then I would definitely seek professional help. See a nutritionist who's knowledgeable in this area. Another area in terms of vocal health is a big controversial area is dairy and mucus. So it's funny because there was a study that was done a while ago which showed that a lot of people will say that dairy doesn't cause mucus, but what they found was that if someone thought it would cause mucus, in that person, it did. So I have learned throughout my career not to discount when someone tells me they're experiencing a symptom or something from a food that they're eating. So I advise people, if they feel like dairy is causing mucus, okay, then let's cut the dairy, but it doesn't absolve your body's needs for those nutrients. So we need to find a way to get those nutrients into your body. Calcium, potassium, vitamin D, protein, all of those things. Your body still needs to get those. So it doesn't negate the need for those. But if dairy bothers you, okay, so then don't have dairy. And there were some other foods also on an individualized basis, but those are like the basics for vocalists that I find.
There's also, it sounded great, thank you. I learned from it. Just in terms of acupressure, Chinese medicine is pretty interesting because you actually have the entire body on various parts of the body. And so one of the microsystems is, let's put it this way. This is your head. This is your torso. This is your lower torso. So one of the things you can do is actually start gently massaging all below your hand as if that were your neck. And if you find tight points, if you find tenderness, you can just gently rotate and massage it for a few moments, for a minute, for 2 minutes, gently. And you can try both hands, and that can help. As a general, this is more global. If you're really tired, if you're stressed out, I wouldn't do it in public necessarily, but you could. You could actually massage your ears for about a minute. Not hard, not so they're like burning, but another microsystem in Chinese medicine is basically the ear. Okay, so you've got the entire body on the ear. If you massage the ear, you actually kind of like massaging your body, and it's a wonderful feeling. Sometimes it'll tingle, and that tingling is almost like the tingling that your body gets after a great massage. So these are two different ways that you can actually access your body through just local points.
I love it. Anything else? No?
For mild irritation, you could, on a short-term basis, try slippery elm lozenges. We have a wonderful monograph on that site I told you about, but it's actually, it even says it on the box, used by opera singers and things. I'm saying on the short-term, mild thing, slippery elm is very soothing. slippery elm, like slippery and like the tree, the elm. It's found in everywhere. Again, short-term use. And alcohol, one of the other irritants. I hate to say it. I know it's a psychosocial relaxer and stuff, but alcohol is this huge irritant. We have a lot of patients who have esophageal difficulties, precancerous things going on in here because of stomach acid, and alcohol is something to consider to limit if there's vocal irritation.
And just to follow up, how important is hydration? Oh. Yeah. Just, we've covered water, being hydrated, but it does play a role in the voice as well.
And it's critical to be assessed by a medical professional because there are certain conditions such as thyroid that show up as a gravelly voice.
Huh.
There are symptomatic things. So it's important to take advantage of all that's available to you in maintaining yourself because you are your product.
Yeah, we're our instrument. And then just a question that came from the audience is, what techniques would you suggest to do before entering an audition?
Okay, well, well, right before an audition, the ideal is to be relaxed as possible. So if you have, so assuming you have some alone space, like you can go to the restroom, no one's gonna watch you there, and you can just do simple. There's so many different meditations, but you can do like a simple breathing technique. One that I find is really good for anxiety is the idea of using the alternate nostril breathing. And so this is used in many different yogic traditions, and it's a way of calming the mind. And so on the energetic level, it's considered that our body's comprised of meridians, but also of nadis. And so these are like energetic channels that run through our organs and all the microsystems of the body. And so within the yogic tradition, the left nostril corresponds to what's called Ida, which is this channel inside of our body that allows us to relax. And the right nostril, Pingala, which is the active principle. And so one simple technique is to breathe through alternate nostrils, just using your thumb and an alternate finger. And it's just a way of calming the mind and balancing those two major meridians. And so it allows you to be in a greater sense of neutrality. And so neutrality is a sense of calmness and awareness, but it's not about detaching. So you still allow yourself to be present, but just more mindful. And so within that, it allows you to feel more confident in yourself, especially right before you have to go through a major audition or any challenging situation you have to prepare for. It's just a way of resetting your mind so that you allow yourself just to go in there clearer.
Yeah, you can walk us through a brief one if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, easy. Okay.
Okay.
So just take your thumb and just block your right nostril. And then through your left side, you inhale deeply. And using either your pinky or your ring finger, just block off your left side. And then exhale through the right, which you open your thumb. And then through the right nostril, inhale deeply. Closing it off and exhale through the left. And allow your eyes to be closed and continue alternating the breath. And just work to a comfortable length of your breath and time of your breath so that you don't feel any strain whatsoever with the inhale and the exhale. It just becomes seamless. And that the inhale can greet the exhale. Exhale greets the inhale. And this way of creating a flow with your breath, it also allows you to create a flow and rhythm within your life and your consciousness. And just to end it, you can just relax the hand, or you can even take an inhale and deep exhale and just relax. And so this is a simple technique that you can do for even a few seconds has an experience.
And we're done. No. Thank you all. No. And we're wacky enough, we can do that without having to go to the bathroom. We could actually do that. It just kind of threatens the competition. I mean, I know it's not a competition either, but like they're
It's
like,
also
oh
New York
crap,
City.
she's doing something.
So doing that on the subway, no one's really going to give you a weird look. It's
No.
New York City.
We're fine. We're fine with that. We're cool with that. People will be like, did you go to that SAG thing too? Yeah, me too. Anything else right before the audition?
I would suggest that you send an energetic line of connection to all the upper four corners in the space, that you just have a sense that you are in the room. And 2 plugs for books that colleagues just wrote. The Actor's Secret. It's Betsy Politin, P-O-L-A-T-I-N. She teaches in the theater department at Boston University. And then Bill Connington, C-O-N-N-I-N-G-T-O-N. The Actor's Guide to the Alexander Technique, Exercises for Stage and Screen. Bill was on the faculty here, and he's now a lecturer at Yale. And they have, they're full of activities that you can apply Alexander Technique, but they're really about looking at every aspect of what can go wrong, you know, what can trigger you as an actor, and then what to work with. And they're both experienced performers, so they're going to hit on whatever your issue is. We don't all have the same triggers.
Yeah.
You know, we're all different and unique, so you want to know yourself well. But just, you know, just fill the space, claim the space.
Yeah. Anything else there? All right, so we're nearing the end of our panel discussion here, and I've been steering the ship with these questions, but I always like to offer you guys just the opportunity to impart something that we haven't touched on, or some kind of pearl of wisdom that only you would know that we would need to know. Right? Because you guys are the experts. We're here to listen to you guys. Go for it. Go for it.
I'm going to share 2 things that I share with all my patients, not when they're in the throes of difficulty and things. I'm saying when they're feeling well, they want to eat well, and they're questioning motivations and things like that. But there was a biochemist who owned a vitamin company. I'm not going to use his name right now, who would come to New York City once a year, and he was just the best lecturer I've ever heard in my life. And I just loved listening to him come every year. And excuse me, and I could not believe how inspirational this biochemist is speaking. And now you know your life is pretty boring and you're kind of nerdy and a geek when you can't wait till this biochemist shows up so you can, you know, go to the, give up Saturday, you know, maybe brunch with your wife and spend it at the Hilton all day long to listen to this guy once a year. I mean, it got so bad that the people who registered for this, I told them it was my second Christmas, and this was just like a joke throughout the whole company. But this guy said 2 things over 2 different lectures over years that kind of nailed it for me. He was speaking once on diabetes, heart disease, and cancer, an 8-hour lecture, disease in general. And, you know, you figure it's 6 hours with breaks and lunch and everything. And at the end, it's 3:59 on a Saturday afternoon. It's a May day. You want to get outside. You're like, okay, I've had enough. I had enough. And during Q&A, somebody says, Doctor, could you describe the best anti-cancer diet in 1 sentence? And you just heard this audible groan in the room of about 300 people. We wanted to throttle this guy. You know, it's like, oh, yeah, he's been talking for 8 hours. He's going to sum it up in 1 sentence. And this wonderful gentleman said, yeah, to the best of your ability, limit white sugar, white flour, white fat. And I almost fell off my chair. And I said he did it. And everybody else started laughing like it was a joke. I'm going, no, he just described what's wrong with most of our diets. There's no color, there's no nutrients, there's no fiber, but limit white sugar, white flour, white fat. And that's a real easy thing to live by. White fat, in case you're wondering, is lard, and they're marbling in meat, and high fat, you know, chicken skin. And, I mean, you know, just in general, limit. He didn't say avoid, he said limit. And then a couple years later, my last inspirational thing I'll say that inspires me to this day, because he was into genetics and things like that, he said, your food speaks to you on a genetic level. You can make a case that your food, the phytonutrients and the antioxidants, speaks to your genes, telling them how to behave, how to express themselves, how to influence health. So your food is speaking to your genes, telling them how to behave, because you have 2 choices every time you reach for something to eat. You can send your genes alarm molecules, or you could send your genes bliss molecules. What are you going to choose? And those are two things that have stayed with me to this day. And I share that with all my patients. So, for what it's worth.
It's worth a lot.
So I'll add on to that a little bit. So I agree with the what to not eat, absolutely. But on the other hand, I like to think about also then what to eat, because we know what not to do, but what to do. So one thing that can be really helpful, and it's fun, and people of all ages can do this, is to think about eating foods of different colors, because there are bioactive compounds, meaning there are good things in particularly produce of all different colors. And a lot of times, people look down at their plate and see like everything looks beige, and it's like boring and there's nothing going on there. So we want to really try to include foods of every color of the rainbow. And when I talk to my clients about doing that, it becomes like a game. And do you have something today that was red, something yellow, something orange, something green, something purple, something brown? There's maitake and shiitake mushrooms and things and are brown, and they're healthy ingredients in those. So think of foods of all different colors, blue and purple. Try to get in all the colors of the rainbow, and that just gets you going in a way of you're thinking positively about eating, and it makes food look more appealing also. So that's my little gem.
Yeah, I actually tell some of my patients to buy a bag of jelly beans, and they look at me like he's nuts. I go, yeah, look at all the colors in the bag of jelly beans. Hold them in your hand, then throw them out and go buy fruits and vegetables. Look at the same color, So.
I would just add, in terms of how we want to, I think a lot of this is about stress. And so one of the things we can do is when we wake up, we can envision how we want our day to be. And we can say, how do I want stress in my day? And if not, then what do I want to replace it with? And we have some options such as joy, such as calmness, such as how can I be of service? And when we start to approach our day and the people we communicate through those filters, rather than what are you doing to me, which is the option of stress-based thinking, then we all of a sudden start to open up to the world, and it's not, and so what happens is that the stressful people kind of flow through us. They cannot attach to us if we are in that state of mind where we can absolutely just come from that positive state, of the positive state of I'm here today to be a creature of joy rather than survive and throttle the enemy. And so I just encourage everybody to, in the morning, just go, how's this day going to be? I got a choice here, and then use that as a game plan.
Nice.
I would say, to echo what everyone else has said, most of you got into this business because it's so joyful when it's happening. Yeah. So it's important on a day-to-day basis to be aware, how much am I waiting to feel like I'm alive and doing something I love, and how can I bring something each day into my day where it's happening now, because we are seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. And as a metaphor, when you're young, you don't have hindsight, but you should floss your teeth every day and brush your teeth twice a day, and take that advice and apply it to what you put in your body, who you hang out with, and how you feel in your body. And you have to be an expert in you, and we all have huge blind spots. So ask for help, and also provide that help to the people around you, because we are communal creatures as well. And other people on the panel alluded to it. The way Alexander Technique looks at it is we are in a chronic low-grade state of startle response, and we are learning to turn up the relaxation response. And you're going to start to notice how the food you put in your body affects you. You're going to start to notice how the internal dialogue affects you. And know what makes you feel good and have something every day. You know, that's present time, success, and pleasure.
Yeah. Also, something that I've really noticed with a lot of actors I've worked with is addiction is a huge issue. And so this is something that really to address it is exactly what she just said, is to have your community, your support. So if you know you're dealing with something, then it's reach out for the help. And so when I'm working with someone that's dealing with addiction, I give them acupuncture, we work with yoga, but also I still tell them to go to AA meetings, support meetings. And sometimes there could be shame involved around that, but really that's a really fundamental practice to help so many people, is a support practice, and to allow yourself to continue reaching out. Because the moment that you allow yourself to disconnect from others, disconnect from the support, then you're just trapped in your own head. You're trapped in your own patterns. And so just as much as how much you've been investing into your career, you want to invest into your health, because that's also investing in your career. And so many great actors we've lost because of these addictions. And so it's important to address these things early on. And there's so many ways that you can address that as well. Also, meditation is something, in addition to everything else, that will help to support you. And sometimes we can go into the state like, oh, I'm too busy to meditate, I'm too busy to do this. But you even just found this, like next time you're in the bathroom, just do this. And that can incorporate just something every single day, because the same as brushing your teeth is the same way I describe meditation. So you brush your teeth every day, probably you shower every day. So the same thing with your mind. It's a way of cleaning your mind every single day and addressing yourself every single day at a deeper level. And so this what I can offer is just to really just experience yourself, know yourself, and continue to reach out.
Thank you for that. I'm on beer. And I'm also sorry that you didn't get the memo about wearing blue for tonight's panel. we will remedy. Oh, thank God. Thank God. I also have to acknowledge Kate for putting together this panel. Thank you, Kate, for helping us tonight. What a marvelous assemblage of people. I always feel so honored to get to moderate these things, because I get to learn the most, because I get the microphone to ask the most questions. But I'd like to thank Almond Bear and Brooke and Donald and Andrea and Dan. And thank you all for being here tonight. Wonderful.